I'm Jill Watson, and we met through taking pictures of me in furs.
Yeah, so why do you wear fur, Jill?
Primarily to keep warm, because I am literally always freezing. Even in the summer, I'm always freezing, but especially in this old house in the depths of winter, we have furs everywhere as dressing gowns, as blankets. But I also wear fur because I like it.
What do you like about it?
I like the smell. I like the feel of it. I like the nature of it. I like the way that you become the fur rather than the fur becomes you. I only wear furs that are ancient and cost a few pounds from boot sales, and I'd never buy a new fur. So the furs that I have been worn and worn and worn by many different people over the years. Lots of old ladies, and they always keep their own smell, which I find astounding, because you'd never buy something from a charity shop that has never been washed over its lifetime of maybe 50 years. You just wouldn't. You wouldn't think about it. It'd be completely disgusting. But fur's not like that.
So what's it like being visible out in a giant fur coat? Tell me about that, because that's quite an interesting thing.
I've been wearing furs for so long that back then it was more obvious that it was fur. I think nowadays, because there's a craze and a trend for fake fur, fake furs become much better than it was, that maybe people don't always realise that my fur's real when I'm out. But back in the day, I was living in London, and there would be protests every Saturday in London outside Selfridges or Harvey Nichols for anti-fur protests. And I would still wear my furs and walk through it because I did welcome the conversation. I've always welcomed the conversation. Even though my thoughts are not 100% clear, how do I really feel about it? Things like Angora rabbits. I would never wear Angora because of the ridiculous cruelty for the Angora rabbits to take their fur. I don't think that animals should be farmed just for their fur, but I also think it's quite ridiculous for people to eat meat and not be able to touch a fur coat because it gives them the creeps. I don't understand that.
What about the fact that they're never new? Can you talk about that? Like, the furs that you wear are not new furs. Well, how is that, like, in terms of sustainability, in terms of your politics?
Well, interestingly, when I lived in London, at one stage I lived on the Gold Hawk Road, and without knowing it, the Anti-Vivisection League had the building next door. It was a semi-detached house, and the other half of our house was the headquarters of the Anti-Vivisection League. And years later, when I'd moved up here, I met somebody who had taken some furniture to that I was selling to her, and I had a fur coat on, and I just got this fur coat from a charity shop, and it was old, and I didn't think about walking into a house with it. Didn't worry me. I went in, there were cats everywhere. I sat on her sofa, which had a black cover on it, and I molted everywhere. I got up and I just left so much fur. It was not a particularly good fur coat, and it was just sheddy. And she noted this, and mentioned that she's been a member of the Anti-Vivisection League for most of her life, and she was very anti-furs. It transpired that she had been in the house next to me, working in their headquarters at the time when I was living there, madly, back in the 1980s. But she has a vintage clothes shop in the town up here, and she bought furs and she resold furs, which I found extraordinary. But she gave all the money to the Anti-Vivisection League. And I thought, oh, okay. But she had the view that it has this life. It has this life that's carrying on. And as I don't feel it's right for something to be thrown away, to be assigned to. What are we going to do? Make fur a fast fashion item and just throw it onto landfill?
Like, you know what I mean? Then, and that, you know, I think you've said before about, you know, you can buy something from Marks and Spencer's, and it certainly doesn't mean that this is going to be a more, you know, more ethical. But so if you, instead of me like saying it, if you could maybe say something about that, but also you're a chef and you work with food, and that is connected to this, I think. Some of the projects you've done, that's activism and food and cooking and...
I mean, you know, I've got children, and we live here in Lancashire, where we're surrounded by moorlands, and there's a lot of shooting goes on. My next door neighbour on that side shoots, but he doesn't like to eat what he shoots. But nevertheless, he takes it away with him, which is also a massive thing, because one of the things that I really detest is shooting and then the birds being either buried or burnt on the moors. I don't think they're burning them as much. I think there was such an outcry about that I don't think they're burning them. But there were literally thousands of birds being burnt or buried at every shoot. And that to me is just horrific. My next door neighbour will shoot it, but he'll bring it back and leave it on the pheasant hook at the side of our house, and then we'd eat it. So, but it wasn't just pheasants, there were hares, all kinds of things. So my children have been brought up to see where their meat comes from. And they've both plucked pheasants, and they've both drawn pheasants, put their hands inside the pheasants to take the insides out of the pheasants, and they've cut up and butchered the meat as well. So, as far as I'm concerned, if you're wearing fur and it's freezing, fine. If you wear fur as a status symbol, then I have a little bit of a problem with that. My husband is forever walking around after me with gaffer tape because all my furs are ripped, and I like that. I don't want it to be perfect, so I don't like anything to be too perfect. I don't think that's the point of it. It's not. It is fashion. There is fashion in, or maybe it's more of a statement rather than fashion. Not wearing something because it is fashionable. Sometimes it is the opposite of that. I have worn fur in situations where I know it's going to be controversial, and it's always about having a conversation. Always.